Hey everyone, Switch here. It has been a while since I did a Q&A video, and this time I actually had 20 questions. Unlike most of the other times I had more questions, but I still appreciate that you guys had asked me any questions you wanted to. So, before I start to answer the questions, I want to say I'm happy to be able to answer these questions and also being able to have reached 7,800 subscribers. My next goal will be 8,000 subscribers, and I'm sure I might reach that sometime during the summer or after summer. Now, let's start with the answer to questions. The first person to ask me more questions is one of my new friends, Zach Plays. He asked me 4 questions. Number 1, do you think Sunny ended up with Izzy? That's actually a good question. I do believe that maybe there is a possibility that Sunny and Izzy could end up being as a couple near sometimes in this show, showing that they are somehow getting closer as in a friendship. But it's a mere possibility that they could end up being together, but only time can tell us. His second question is, will you do a Twilight Starlight video? My answer is yes. I will do a love story based on Twilight and Starlight. In fact, it is among many stories I had planned in mind to do. It's just that some things has come between, like other stories or just things had come between. But sure, Twilight and Starlight love story will be made as promised. Zach's Play's third question is, do you think you could do a Rainbow Dash Derpy Hoops love story? Question is, well, quite simple, yes. That's actually a story idea that I really think is an intriguing story. I really liked the possibility that Derpy and Rainbow Dash could see each other as a romantic couple. After all, I have seen Derpy with Dr. Hooves and a few others in fact. So why not with Rainbow Dash and Derpy? But Zach, aka Stormy, it will be made. That you have my promise on. Zach Play's last question is, will you do a Scootaloo Babseed love story? That is actually a story idea I hadn't even thought of. But it still is a good question, and yes, I will make Scootaloo Babseed love story, but I can't say exactly when it will happen, but I will promise you it will be made. At the moment I don't know, but it will be made. That I give you my promise to. The second person who asked me questions is my good friend Cody Lane Character. He asked me 10 questions. In fact, in the past, when he asked me multiple questions, he did ask me many, which I very much appreciate. Now, let's start with his questions. His first question is, can you do a love story of Big Macintosh, Octavia, or Big Macintosh and Celestia? The answer is yes. I will have to make those stories as soon as I can, considering how many other people have asked me their stories, but they will be made at some point in the future. But I do promise as soon as I can. And his second question is, do you think Hitch will be shipped with either one of the girls of G5? Well, that is a bit tricky. After all, he seems to be very close to Sunny, but since considering that Sunny and Hitch are childhood friends, but if I may have to suggest my own idea how he would end up with it, it's more likely to be with Pip. Pip Petals, the younger sister of Zip. But if I may just say, yes, I do believe that Hitch could end up with one of the girls. And his third question is, what if Terek, Chrysalis, Cosiclo were to return in G5? Now that is an impressive and also a good question, considering how they back in the G4 ending, how well, they were the biggest bad guys that were released by Discord. But if I had to admit, the idea that T-Rex and Kozaglow and Chrysalis to be as the new bad guys in G5, or at least perhaps being minions to someone, that's also a good question. But knowing that this trio, which I call them, they didn't like to be as the minions of Grogar, aka Discord. But I do believe if there was a possibility that T-Rex, Kozaglow, and Chrysalis could return in the G5, there's a good chance. Knowing that in one of the comic book series in the last of season 10, spoiler alerts, the statue they were prisoned in was cracking in pieces, meaning they were getting free from the statue. But comic books are not considering to be as canon. So, yeah. His fourth question is, will Equestria Girls ever come back? Because he said, quote, because I'm in love with the human versions of the ponies and Sunset Shimmer, end quote. Yes, about that, I don't know about that though. But I'm really hopeful that they might be able to bring back this Equestria Girls as maybe as another short special movies like Backstage Pass or Forgotten Friendship, or something like that. But I would have loved if they could bring back Equestria Girls. Even if they were like long movies like Friendship Games, Legend of Everfree, something like that, that would have been an incredible part of the story. I mean, if they could just continue the franchise of the Equestria Girls. But I do love the idea they could hope that they could bring those stories back as well. That is my answer to that. His fifth question is, do you think of a crossover between DC Comics and Marvel Comics in an anime movie? Well, that is actually not as a bad idea. Considering that some of the other previous superheroes like Superman and Batman had actually made a crossover to each other's series in the past, in an anime series. But it is an anime movie of characters from DC Comics and Marvel Comics. But yeah, I think that's actually would not be as a bad idea. I mean, considering how many amazing and awesome characters, like bad or one of the bad characters, like some of the main villains, or some of the main heroes from either both sides, end up in an anime series or an anime movie. But yeah, I think that's a possibility that could consider that a crossover between characters from DC Comics, Marvel Comics can actually do happen. So, yeah. His sixth question is, will there be a chance of Spike reappearing or even mentioned in G5? To him, Spike is important. Well, considering from that we don't know about that though, Cody, Lane, at the moment we don't know much about it. But it would have been amazing that Spike did make some form of appearance in a G5. Either himself reappearing in an Equestria after such a long time, or maybe appearing some, I don't know, flashbacks telling about it from when Sunny reading about the Guardians, aka the main six, from a book from her father's research, where she mentioned about Spike as the dragon. Since we know that Sparky Spartaroni, well, the name of the new dragon that appeared in G5, actually is now with Hitch. So, but yeah, I do really hope that maybe Spike could reappear in the new series that's gonna be on TV or on Netflix around September this year. But I do really hope that Spike might either reappear officially in the show itself or maybe appear as a flashback, or it may be mentioned. Either way, that would have been amazing that if that happened. And it's 7 questions. What if there was a live-action My Little Pony movie with the ponies and dragons animated? Well, I mean, consider that were like, though this is not included with the 2017 movie, which were animated, but But if it's a live action, well, the idea would have not been as a bad idea though, because they have made a lot of different live action movies or different shows in the past. Like, for an example, Dragon Ball Z, which has been an animated series for years, but they made a live action movie of Dragon Ball. So the basically understanding of idea to making a live action of My Little Pony G4 or perhaps even G5 of the ponies and dragons and basically other characters or other creatures. But yeah, I really had hoped that could happen one day. Considered, like I said, Dragon Ball Z, or at least the Dragon Ball character series, has been an anime series for years until they made a live action. So the basic comment, the basic from that making them a live action of My Little Pony, that I would love to see. And his eighth question: do you prefer Rarity Spike or with some other chips like Spike with other female characters for them as like Coco Pomel, Sweetie Belle, Apple Bloom, something like that. Even though Spike is had made them more as the oldest with Rarity, but yes, I can see him to be with other female characters. But if I had to be really honest, I do think that he works better with Rarity than others. Well, maybe Sweetie Belle or Rarity, but I would prefer with Rarity myself. And his ninth question is, well, this might be a little bit unusual that never has been asked before, but he said, are you tired of death? He said, quote, I am. I fear it so much it's scary and a nightmare, end quote. To be fair, Cody, yes. In the past, I was always a tired of death, even terrified of death. No, horrified of death. Seeing that I lost my grandparents when I was a young age, I had no memories of them, and losing my maternal grandmother back in 2014. So, and knowing that the perspective and the view or the insight of death, like in one near instant, your life would be over, like a blink of an eye. So yes, I'm tired of death. But death is a part of the natural cycle. Without it, nothing would die. The world would be overpopulated and that would have been a big disaster. But to answer your question, yes, I'm tired of death. His 10th and final question is, what type of elemental powers do you prefer yourself? He said, quote, I always prefer fire, ice, metal, and dark, end quote. Well, I would probably say myself with either ice, water type of elemental powers, but well, if technically though that ice and water would be this basically the same thing, it's just frozen water, so I would just say water is my elemental powers. And Cody, I hope you enjoyed the answers for your questions. Thank you. Next person to ask me a question is Kuvu the Bad Boy. His question is asked, my question is, do you think you would be able to make stories with Kuvu, obviously starting as a lion cub but in Equestria, like a world that he would be a rare species of magical lions and that he would like to be the strongest, fastest, and very well trained in combat, preferably on martial arts style, and that would be a strong magic, and that would be his character design and add attributes, and while the shipping with him was Scootaloo, Ship First Ship, Rainbow Dash, and Screwball, maybe, perhaps, Cozy Glove, if possible, that size Star Scout from G5, of course, separately. My question is, would you be able to actually come up with a story's ideas based on this? My answer is, well, I have actually never been even considered that in the first place, or at least never thought of the idea. But this idea that Kuvu could have been as belong to a rare species of magical lions in Equestria? Now that is a very intrigued question, or at least idea. Knowing that some of the other species that like hippogriffs and dragons and some other creatures out there. But having Kuvu to be part of as a rare species of magical alliance in Equestria is something I hadn't even thought of. But I think it's actually a very interesting idea. And having him to be shipped with Scootaloo, Rainbow Dash, Screwball, and even Cozy Glow, and even perhaps like Sunny Star Scout. But yeah, I can actually see that it's a possibility that he could actually end up with all of them at the same time, or perhaps even others. That's of course is up to the question. But yes, seeing him as being a member of a rare species of magical alliance, and that he would be trained in combat like martial arts style, and that has strong connection to the magic, and that he would chat with several characters. But yes, I do think that is actually not a bad idea. And in fact, I will try to figure out if a way to make him to work out with some of the other stories. But I really like this idea. Thank you for that. Since I never even I would never imagine came up with this good idea. But Kuvu the bad boy, you may have come up with a good ideas for future stories based on this. I will not be more happier to say thank you. Next person to ask me a question is Juan Crispo. I'm sorry if I did mispronounce your name, but I'm sorry. But he asked me, if you are able to make a crossover between Dragon Ball, Equestria Girls, and Xenoverse, that I will there really appreciate. Well, to be first, I had actually never seen much of Dragon Ball's Z characters or shows in the past, not even the movie they made out, or the live action one. But in Xenoverse, yeah, that is actually something I wasn't even aware it was what type of show or game the words are based on. But I can see as a possibility maybe that it could have been a Dragon Ball Z, or at least Dragon Ball Equestria Girls, or Equestria Girls version of a crossover with Xenoverse. But yeah, I think it is at least a strong possibility that I might be able to do a crossover between those. In order to do so, I may have to figure out exactly how those characters would end up in Equestria's Girls universe. But yeah, no, but then I might say it's a good chance. It's a very good chance that they could be end up being able to work on. Just have to figure out some basically good story how to that make possible. So at least to make sense to my viewers. But I'm not saying that I'm not willing to do it, but I will consider it. That's what I will do. Thank you. Next question to be asked from Britney's Vlogs, Movies, Clips, and Shorts. She asked me, what is your favorite My Little Pony character? Well, that can be a little bit tricky, but I do have at least a few characters. But if I had to name my top favorite character, that would have been Spike. Actually, I prefer Spike of almost, because he is, in the past he was abused by most of the main 6 characters or others. But over time he was actually given more better roles. But I will say Spike would be my favorite MLP character. Next question is to be asked by my friend Godzilla 2000. How many stories you have planned? Godzilla 2000? Yeah, that is a question that might be almost impossible to ask or even answer to be fact. I mean, consider that I almost had made nearly 600 stories for nearly during almost 7 years. But to being being completely honest, I have no idea how many stories I actually have planned. I mean, sure, I had many stories that have been asked in the past, or the most recent year, of the recently, but if I have to be honest with myself, I really don't know. I mean, I had so many stories that had been planned up for months, or perhaps even years, in fact. But I might have to say, well, if I was made an almost guess on an answer, perhaps um, maybe one 200 stories maybe, but I will leave it so I wouldn't be so certain myself. But if I had to be given a much answer, maybe 100. But I'm not so sad. But like I said, I'm not really completely sure myself. I'm certain how many stories have been asked, but if I like I said, 100 at most. But then the list can even go more and more as time went on. But thank you for your answer, for your question. And the final questions are coming from my friend Game Guy. He asked me two questions. How many love stories are you planning on doing? Even though I did kind of answer the questions already from my friend Godzilla 2000, but Game Guy, like I said to Godzilla, I really don't know exactly how many stories I am planning on to do. But this seems I have been asked so many stories in the past and recently, and as I have so many ideas myself, but like I said, maybe 100 or more. It's hard to tell. And he said, and his second question is, how long do you think it will take them to make them all? Wow. Now that is a good question, but it would be almost impossible to answer though. I mean, if I would have to answer all the stories I had in mind since my email itself had contained up to close to 400 love stories, ideas, and even include true friend stories. If I would have to do all of them, just only them alone, it might have been taking me weeks. But the best estimate to that, I would say maybe um, 2, maybe 4 months. If I only worked on them, if I worked maybe as 2, maybe 3 stories in a week, or if I worked on 2 stories per day, well, that would not include if I'd made them as audio stories. Then I probably could make up those 300 stories. Maybe if I would make up to between three or four audio stories per day, and of the almost 400, I'm maybe 2 3 months. But honestly, I have no idea how long it will take me to make all of them, or just based on those in my email. But I'd probably say at least a few months, at least. But considering how many people that had asked me their stories and if I will include them, it will probably take me at least a few years. Unless that if I don't get any more news stories requests for like today, from today and onwards, and include those I've already had, and include those ones in my email, it probably will take me at least, and I mean at least, a few years. Like maybe 3 4 years, give or take. And that is just only I only suspect at least that could be like 3 4 years if I made all of them, include also my email. But that is just only like a roughly estimation how long that will take. But Game Guy, you did ask me a good question, but like I said, this is only based for I believe at least, but thank you for asking me those questions. Wow. This Q&A video ended up much better than expected it would be. Since it had been a while since I even made a Q&A video. But I hope to be able to do more in the future. and I really hope to have a lot more questions to ask or to answer. But still, everyone, I am really deeply appreciated all the questions you had asked me. Even though I did only have 20 this time, in the past I had more, but I don't mind if I had 20, 30, 100 questions to ask to be answered. But as long as I have at least some questions to be answered, that is all that matters for me. And of course, not only that I give the answers, but you also get to know what I think about the answers for the questions. I really will say that all of you do ask me good questions. So, once again, I am deeply appreciated. I would not been asked for any better support for all of you. And before I end this video, I also want to thank every single one of my subscribers, viewers, and other supporters out there to have helped me to have reached 7,800 subscribers. Next goal to me is to reach 8,000. So if I reach this during the summer or even after summer, I will be very grateful, more than anything in the whole world. And for that, I cannot be more proud and even grateful. So once again, everyone, thanks for these 20 questions, and I do hope to be able to answer more questions like in a Q&A video in the future. Once again, thank you. This is Switch Double signing off. Or as I say, Switch Double over and out.